On that note, we
Ooh,
seem to be live.
we are.
Are you
Hmm.
ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be. I'm dying to.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, there's
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of Corpse Garden Chronicles, where we actually talk about the cemeteries. And this is my co-host and buddy Pyle, or whichever way I mean.
You know what? Being on here, every other format I've ever done switches it and it makes it backwards. This is the only format that I go and I point that way, and I'm actually pointing at her, even though I'm pointing at a microwave.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm pointing at you, but I'm pointing at the opposite direction. So
Right.
whichever
Right.
way he is.
Yeah, and I have a dry erase board right in front of me that reminds me to point the opposite direction. But we are not here because my dry erase board or our lack of capabilities of being able to point in the right direction.
So this episode, we are talking about natural disasters, cemeteries, and different ways people have buried people, because we also wanted to talk about Everest and how they just left the bodies there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so the reason that this episode is even thought of is because there was a natural disaster that was so horrible that came across my news feed, and I told Friday, "Hey, we need to go ahead and do one of these shows that talks about absolutely just talking about national natural disasters that us humans have no control over. We didn't see it was coming. We had no idea. And there is a lot of things that can happen to our pretty little stones that we put in cemeteries to mark our loved ones. And if it wasn't for the caretakers and the different organizations, um, a lot of these cemeteries would actually be wiped off and they, you know, would just become a couple of stones and no one would know actually what was there at any given time.
Yes, because there are forgotten cemeteries everywhere that we don't
Mhm.
know anything about until a natural disaster happens and people are unearthed. Sometimes natural disasters happen and bodies are just like missing from the caskets, and they have to figure out where they went.
And that is one of the terrible things. When something happens, the loved ones feel despair all over again for their loved ones that was in the ground and now something has happened. And the reason that this even started was because in Wheeling, Wheeling, West Virginia, they got a massive amount of rain that came down a hill mountainside and created such a landslide that it's unbelievable. But unfortunately, almost 200 different graves had been affected by this, and some of them actually, the tombstones are messed up and this and that. And it got me thinking, well, this can't be the first time that this has happened. And this ain't the first time a disasters went after something. The only thing that cemeteries are kind of protected by, in a way, is actually wildfires, because they're underground and the stones can be harmed by the flames, but they're not destroyed. And actually, you can clean them afterwards. I've never seen anything, and I could be totally wrong, but I have not seen it, Friday, on a fire taking out a cemetery and people having to go in there and replace things or move stuff back in the. I think it's just a cleanup at that point.
Yes, but also there are different types. Luckily with this, there are different types of tombstone cleaners that help keep them help you clean the tombstone without hurting it. It's just sort of the easier type of compared to some of the things we plan on talking about and showing today.
Right. And there's a lot of people, when something does happen, that volunteer their time, volunteer their services to get things back up and running. And when something happens in a natural disaster, in a tombstone falls over, it's not like four people just picking it up, sticking it back in the dirt and saying, we're done. No. The way that these tombstones are created nowadays, um, there's glues, there's centering, there's leveling. It's just not what it used to be years ago. You would actually stick a tombstone underneath the ground about a half a foot and it was there. I mean, they didn't think, oh, well, this needs to go past the test of time. And that's why when you find a older cemetery, the stones might be moved, they might be warped, might be broken half. And unfortunately, weather does destroy, and you can't stop it from doing that.
Yes. And there's even an entire cemetery where there's nothing but metal tombstones.
Mm-hmm.
And
One of
those
the
are very warped.
yeah, one of the cemeteries around here, not too far, about probably 15 minutes away. Their regulation is that you cannot have a tombstone that stands above the ground. It needs to be level. And the reason they need it to be level is, number one, it lessens the upkeep. And number two, the mowers can actually go across the plates, and then it makes it a lot easier, because as you guys have all been and seen a loved one or visited a friend or something like that, tombstones come in all different shapes and sizes, and um, it's kind of a bear to mow between some of them, or even weed whack.
Oh, yeah. That's why
But
people are trained in maintenance of cemeteries.
mhm. But once again, we know that there's a lot of people that care about cemeteries enough that they actually want to work in them and take care of the loved ones. So I don't know which disaster we're going to start with, but we're going to start diving into the disasters, right?
Yes. Do we want to pick a certain one, or do we just want to do the luck of the draw on the sharing and just talk of each
Well,
one as we go, which is more fun?
well, Well, the way I'm looking at this, I am the co-host and you are the absolute host with the most. So why don't we let you pick, and when you pick, I'll just go along with it.
Alrighty. Well, 2 seconds.
1, 2. Oh, that was actually 2. Good job.
Okay.
By the way, there's actually a couple of different disasters that we actually found that we would have never thought of affecting cemeteries, which is kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, there. I even found a website about cemetery disaster plan making.
That's not something I ever came across. Oh boy, I'm going to have to look this up. Doomsday Prep, file 15.
Okay. Now that I'm sure it can be seen.
Yep.
This one is about the cemetery preservation and disaster planning, where the different hurricanes had flooded the Louisiana cemeteries. And this is an aerial view of the New Orleans cemetery after Hurricane Katrina.
Which that was devastating not only to the city, it was devastating to a lot of people because they just could not get control over the water, and the water was sitting there for so long of a time that some of the different monuments actually did move around a little bit, which is kind of weird because I never even thought that those being as heavy as they are could be moved, but some of
Oh
them
yeah.
sank and some of them were actually underneath the water level long enough that it actually was moving them from the air that was trapped. When you're looking at a cemetery, you must realize that when they stick a cap on, there's a sealer that goes onto those, and they try to make them airtight, but after a while, the seal just might not work as well as it has. But when it comes down to disasters, they're not really thought of that, hey, this is going to be something that we're going to have to work with.
No, this is after the water is receded and you can see the devastation and how some of the monuments had turned.
Right?
And stuff that is washed up and the receding debris in this picture.
Right. And when it comes down to hurricanes and stuff like this, everybody always takes in consideration of the ones that are living and the houses and this and that. Then after everybody's counted for and this and that, they start thinking about, well, what about property? And when it comes down to a cemetery, that is pretty much the way that a lot of people look at it, as it is a piece of property that is maintained by whatever. And sometimes after a disaster, volunteers will come in and give their time up for the ones that they've never met that are trying to just have a final resting.
This one is after a tornado. And you can see the vegetative debris that was blown around the tombstone.
Not so fun of a fact. We just had a tornado outbreak not too long ago here in Ohio. It was very devastating, but one of the tornadoes actually went into a cemetery. There was trees that were uprooted. They fell on some of the tombstones. They moved stuff around. And that was one of the things. The state route that was right beside that cemetery actually was shut down for a while just so they could get everything cleared. And then 2 weeks afterwards, then the crews were able to get into the cemetery and really start working, um, not just cutting up the trees, but trying to clean up everything from the tornado, because when a tornado comes through, it just grabs everything. And it is like, and Friday, I apologize in advance. It is like some women's purses that just collect everything, and when you dump it out, it just goes everywhere. There, I said it. A tornado is like a woman's purse. Not every woman, just one.
Alrighty. No insult taken. As you can see here in this one, from the Hazards, Colorado education site that we've been looking forward so far, these are different volunteers and cemetery workers that are trying to clean up the debris and find out where the different gravestones are supposed to go back to, because some of them have floated away from their actual spots.
And the great thing is, in today's technology and everything, there are markers in documents and papers, and some people actually have apps on their phones that can actually track where the cemetery and who belongs to what spot. That way, it makes it a lot easier to get the belongings back to the loved ones and replace the tombstone and put it back in place.
I know Greenwood Cemetery in Chattanooga keeps a running map of where each person has been laid to rest. And that's also one I'd wanted to talk about, how the part where my grandfather is deteriorating due to weather just weathering the hill
Mhm.
he's buried on.
And that is a really, really important thing to really think about, because weathering, after a while, if the dirt gets moved, you may have some of the caskets, the vaults, starting to be shown. And unfortunately, if it's enough dirt being moved, they can go ahead and sweep them down into a river if a river is close enough.
Yeah. Here
But
is
I will tell you,
the
yeah, I'm sorry, but I will tell you, as you're looking at this picture, be very mindful of how strong a tornado can be, ripping up a
yeah.
tree and throwing it on something. And these stones, some of these are looking like they're pretty old, so they
Mhm,
can show brittleness. And when they snap, sometimes you can get them back together, and sometimes you can't.
mhm. It Look at this entire tree uprooted and how it broke this particular tombstone beside it.
I will point out that if you guys don't know the way that a root system is on a tree, if the tree is a certain kind, it can actually take the roots and put it underneath a vault. And when the tree gets knocked over or the tree gets picked up, it can actually rip the vault out of its resting spot and start bringing it up to the surface too.
Yes. And this one just shows uh what happens from a mudslide. How the tombstones are deeper in than they were before, with leaves on top and the different debris from it.
And that is
The
something that people will have to go in there and they will have to remove the dirt. That way everything can be checked on. And it's when it comes down to it, you think how peaceful a cemetery can be. And unfortunately, Mother Nature wants to rattle doors and show you how fragile a cemetery can be.
Speaking of rattling doors, this one shows earthquake damage, toppled stones, and fractures.
I didn't even think of that one. I really didn't. Out of the entire list, I didn't even think of that one. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Big enough, earthquake can do so much damage, and just to have those stone doors be able to put back in place, they actually probably would need some kind of craning system. And some of these cemeteries, they put everything so close together that is really hard to get that equipment in. So I would love to see how they fix this stuff, because I never
Mm-hmm.
even thought of an earthquake. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to this stuff, and I like how some of the new tombstones are actually spots that you can actually stick the cremains in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is the end of that particular website. I've put it in the comments for any viewers to find and see what they can, if they want to look at it themselves and read the whole uh, article. So let's see. This one actually shows, sort of like I was talking about, what can happen. The riverbank had receded, the Pearl River in Mississippi, and this is what can happen.
Right.
A picture of the receded Pearl River, and what heavy rainfall can do. This is the city of Callaway.
And I do want to point out, as we do these shows, and I love coming on here with Friday and doing these shows and talking about everything that is cemeteries and death and stuff, I guess. It is not to be sad. Um, cemeteries are full of life, truly full of life. I mean, the water being right there, this might be the only time that some of these guys actually get to go fishing in their afterlife. I mean, my grandpa would be like, "Oh yeah."
Speaking of fishing, this one is the submerged island off of Florida Keys, and he actually does a tombstone rubbing underwater.
Wow,
I
that
didn't
is
ever
pretty
think about
awesome.
doing tombstone rubbings underwater. I didn't know you could until today.
Didn't even know that you had a situation where you had the opportunity to be able to do it, because honestly, if that was land at one point and the water went up, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I've had a situation where it was part of my grade. We had a field trip to the local World War or Civil War cemetery in Saudi Daisy, and
Right?
that was part of the assignments, finding about who's there, making rubbings, and talking about the different ones we knew about and what happened in their lives.
And that is some of the coolest things, to be able to look at a tombstone and just look at the name and try to figure out who that person was, what they did with their life, um, and possibly what contribution they did, and what happened that they passed away. That's not a good sign.
No. This one, yeah, there was widespread damage from the Hurricane Ida.
Yeah, and the terrible thing is, the hurricanes. We all know that they're going to come. We know, and the reason that I really thought about this whole show and why we need to talk about this is because, you know, we always take care of the living as much as we possibly can. And then we need to go and we need to pay our respects and figure out, how to help the deceased. And I'll tell you what, I absolutely would have loved to go there and pick up that casket and bring it back to where it needed to go. Most of these places that have this type of disasters, first thing that they do is funeral homes will go out and they will collect um, all the caskets and put them in a safe place until everything can be taken care of, where they can go ahead and take uh, the caskets and the vaults and everything and put them back in place. Um, so this one probably floated and got in a position, and that's the thing. There's photos left and right of different caskets that are floating down the river that people have tied to trees just to keep them from going out to way past where.
Yeah. Here's another one from the Louisiana Highway 23, where you just see caskets and different debris and what it did with the vehicles and the porch.
Right.
Beautiful old tombstone in Little Harbor. More of the flooding.
And if you go back to that one picture, I want to point something out. It looks like it was Christmas time because people put wreaths out and they put red ribbons on them during the Christmas season. And if that might be snow in that one picture off to
That is snow.
So just so everybody knows, it's not just one time of the year. It doesn't just happen here. It doesn't just happen there. It can happen anywhere. And it's not just a flood situation on these disasters. Floods are like a really big factor to a lot of destruction in these. But I just wanted to point out it doesn't matter what time of the year. And by the way, if I'm cutting you off, just smack me in the face.
I don't want to smack you, but you see things and I see things. Oh, by the way, this is a USA article that I'd read, and I found this one. I have posted in the comments. Really interesting because it talks about different forgotten cemeteries. It talks about how some of the Black community have lost things to time and don't find out about it until older cemeteries are found due to a disaster.
Yep.
And how hard it is to find out where some things are, because each casket has a serial number, and not every funeral home links the serial number on the casket to the decedent.
Right.
And that makes it even harder. And you have to figure it out by things that may be with the decedent, like their pacemaker, or an implanted rod.
A lot of places do not, if they can absolutely help it, do not want to break the seal on a casket. It's to a lot of people, it is very disrespectful. But the biggest thing is, you know, trying to identify the person to get the person back. If they have to, maybe perhaps they have to, because in some of these caskets, you open the lid and it has the person's name, and that could be the link that you need. But that is one of the last resorts that these people really want to do. If there's a security a number on it, I wanted to say VIN number, but I don't think it's a VIN number. If there's a number that these people are doing correctly, and they can say, hey, this person was buried with this number, at least if you can read it, it turns out to be a really good thing.
Some of these people actually expected the decedents to be found at one point or another and put a family tree scroll or document in with the decedent.
Mhm.
And that was the only way they could find out who they were.
Right.
And this one was actually close to here in Pearland. Hurricane Harvey. And this one's still partially underwater. Pita-Bawasi River in Sanford had flooded. I probably butchered that.
Oh, trust me, I will have butchered it worse. I'm not good at. And the horrible thing is seeing all the flags here. All the flags, that one in the front, it's busted. And you know that all these are veterans here that have served, and something has happened way past our control. And you know what? I can only imagine what a war would do to a cemetery. I that's not a natural disaster, that's human made, but that would be a terrible thing too.
That's like looking at a battlefield after a war. They had pictures from the Civil War from the battlefields, and you see what happened to the bodies while they're sitting there, laying there in the hot weather, and what a body does as it decomposes.
Even though that these bodies have been buried and it's just, now in a casket, it still goes through its different forms of decay. And I know, I'm sorry if you thought Grandma was going to look exactly like Grandma did. She doesn't. I love my grandparents, but I would not want to look at them right now. I'm sure that her hair, because it was permed as many times as it's been permed, might stay kind of crispy on the perm side. But yeah.
Whole lot of debris in this particular cemetery in Pine Ridge. The darn it, what's the word? The thing they do to the bodies with the trocar.
Embalming?
Yeah, the embalming only staves it off for a little bit. It does not make it a continuous.
No.
The body's going to decompose regardless.
Right. And I am sorry if anybody ever watches this video and just can't wait to send me a message and telling me how unremorseful I am. Oh no. I love humans and I love life, and death is part of life. Because if you cannot respect the dead, you might not be respecting your life. But that's my personal opinion. But I just believe that there are so many things when you go through a cemetery that shows life. And it's amazing just seeing the different types of tombstones, the different types of this and that. And honestly, the one in front here, those are my grandparents. And she was kind enough to actually put this up here. And I love my grandparents and I do
I
miss them. But I do not ever want to see a natural disaster destroy where they are resting.
I am here not to be morbid.
No.
It has been very taboo to talk about death, but the thing that has happened a lot in my life, I've laid to rest my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. A lot of them when I was really young, and a lot of the adults weren't able to fully explain because they didn't know how to um, talk about it or deal with it. Yes, you can see a real ghost at a cemetery, depending on if they would like you to see them, Sergio or Sergio.
I will tell you,
But
when it comes down to the taboo, this is kind of the reason that this show doesn't show up all the time. It's because, some people are just like looking at it, listening to it, and they just want to get away from it. But, we're very thankful. And a cemetery is to lay the deceased to rest. All the different stuff that goes on is not a funeral in my eyes has never been for the person. Yes, it honors the person, but the different things that happen at a funeral is not for the person that passed. It's for the family, the loved ones, this and that. That way they can get the grief and they can do what they need to do to find their peace and keep on living their life, because no one in a cemetery wants you to stop what you're doing just to mourn them every single day.
mhm.
But yeah,
And the pain lessens, but it doesn't ever fully go away.
right, right. But the reason, like I said, the reason that we even went to bring this up and we were talking about it for a while is because there was a landslide and it affected so many different graves, so many families. And then we start doing the research into this a little bit more. And it's not just there, it's happened across all over. There was
The
a,
world.
yeah, there was a part of a mountain that collapsed. And in that mountain had a cave. And in the cave is where those people laid their family members to rest. So you can't rebuild a mountain. So they had to figure out how to do what they did to honor their family members very quickly in a different way. When it comes down to here, we go ahead and we put up a monument. We go ahead and have people. It's just one of those things that this is what we do here. Different places around the earth or around the planet have different ways of honoring.
Does that help, Sergio? In what we're talking about? Okay.
Uh, I don't know if he's talking about what we
I
are
have no
talking
idea.
about. Yeah, that's kind of a vague question, and we'd like to answer your question.
Here it shows what can happen due to flooding in Pennsylvania. You actually can see the tombstones from the side.
Yeah, and right there is the two vaults. Um, and they might
Yeah.
not be in vaults, but yeah, things like this is terrible because they actually have to get them out. They have to rebuild that land, that earth, and there's a whole way that people have to have this done for them based on the way that these people lived. You can't just pick up something, dig a hole, throw it back in there. That's in a lot of people's eyes very disrespectful. So you take this entire thing and you try to be as compassionate as you can to the circumstances. And some of the families, have had bad experiences laying their loved ones to rest. And if you do a little research, you will find a lot of circumstances with machinery not working right and this and that. So to have something like that happen and then a natural disaster happen that no one has any control to, it just makes that grieving pain come right back of, oh my gosh, I'm so close, but yet so far.
Yeah. This is not an easy subject for anybody, especially those going through it. Because you not only have to deal with the fact that your dead one has been unearthed, then you have to deal with the fact that it needs to be done in a certain way. You have to contact your insurance, you have to contact the cemetery, and so many things have to be put together. And then there's also the money involved that may or may not be covered by your insurance if you have insurance. Because not
If you put
everybody does
insurance
have
on it.
homeowner insurance.
I will say that I have a lot of mixed feelings when it comes down to Egyptian. And the reason I have mixed feelings is because they were put there to be rest. And some governments do go in there, and I'm just not the biggest fan on, having somebody be ripped out of their forever afterlife home to be put on display or to figure out stuff. I wish that there was other ways that people could see, hey, these people live this life like that without disturbing and removing. Looters, that's a big thing, and it used to be even bigger. Looters, people would be buried with stuff and people would dig them up. And this is not a disaster. This is human intervention on another human. Well, a past life human.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many terminologies we don't want to throw, and there's so many terminologies we would love to throw. And
this is why we are using decedent.
So it's just one of those things that, the terminology, it is so much of a taboo with a lot of things. Like, people don't want to listen to it. People don't want to learn from it. And the thing is, I feel like it is one of these things that you should learn about, because a lot of people don't learn about this until a loved one passes away. And then you got to figure out a lot of stuff. Did they have insurance on the tombstone? The tree knocked it over. Is there insurance on it? Yes. Okay. That insurance will take care of it. That way your loved one or whatever. And some people even have tombstones up before they pass away. That's part of the situation too. Just because you're not there doesn't mean that a tornado ain't going to throw a tree into it. I mean,
Exactly.
that would be a wake-up call that maybe that wasn't such the greatest idea of putting the stone there, but...
And Sergio, we will come back to spirits and how they can be seen at a later episode. Today is about natural disasters, but no, I don't have a pair of goggles. I don't normally need them to see ghosts. And yeah, we'll come back to that at that's another show. How about we go to the Clark County tornado one. Here,
Yeah.
it shows more uprooted trees and broken tombstones. But
If you
in the
look
midst
at
of
right
this,
behind of it, that
yeah,
building totally lost a roof.
oh yeah. But in the midst of it, people
Right.
have come together.
So
This is the view from the top of the roof as it's being fixed of that church.
Clark County is about 45 to 50 minutes away from where I am. And I just want to say Clark County did not expect a tornado as much as no one did. But for it to actually go into the cemetery and rip out the trees, rip out the shrubs, rip off a roof off of this building, it was absolutely something that no one foreseen it coming. And once again, how do you protect yourself from this? You can't. It's Mother Nature that is just going to come in here and she's going to grab it and throw it around.
She is a very strong lady.
Yeah.
But in this last picture, you can see the trees that our hearts go out to all these people who have went through this. And this article is from the 2nd of March. So that's
Yeah.
like 2 months ago.
So let me just point out in one of the pictures you've seen a whole bunch of flowers. Some of them were down in the ground right beside a tree that got uprooted. When it comes down to a tornado, you never know what it's going to do, what the capability of the tornado is. So it could rip off all the flowers and be done with it, or it could topple over a whole bunch of stones and it's months of recovery for it. And when I went through that area right after it happened, um, you could just see how it was a cluster of a lot of things. Um, there was things from that cemetery that was found um, down the road. So if you go and you put anything on a cemetery, decoration, this and that, it's a possibility that Mother Nature is going to relocate it. And I'm not saying relocate it into a happy forever home. I'm saying she can take it and use it against anybody. Um, when it comes down to items, we want to decorate because we want to celebrate the life that they lived. But we also must know that these decorations, with a strong gust, can be taken away. Now, I'm not saying do not decorate. I'm just saying um, sometimes heavier items are a little nicer, or the ones that you can actually attach onto the stones.
Yes. To put this in perspective, in 2011, I went through a tornado with my family. Our neighbor's trailer was gone. Our roof was gone, but our neighbor's trailer, I don't know where it landed. I don't know if they were okay. I was never able to find out because the lady with the 2x4 sticking out of her arm was a little bit more important to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
and finding out if the baby that we had, my sister's baby, was okay. And yeah, our little family was okay. There was just minor injuries with us, but others did not turn out so fair. So knowing it can dislocate relocate a trailer to somewhere else, it doesn't surprise me that it could do that to a tombstone, which weighs less.
Right. I just, when it comes down to different stuff, Mother Nature, she's going to do what she's going to do. And when it comes down to funerals and cemeteries and this and that, we have a tradition that we go and we follow. It can be altered a little bit. It can be done a different way. Some cemeteries, they actually have vaults above the ground, and they make sure that they keep the vaults above the ground. There's other ones that they absolutely have buildings that they are called crypts, and crypts is where they'll bring the loved ones and they will put them right into a part of the crypt. So many different things are in a cemetery. So now, I don't know, is there any other disasters that we didn't really touch on that we were talking
We
about?
still have multiple websites that we both collected that we haven't fully went through.
Well, bring them up.
Because I think all of these people should be thought about. There's more all over the world.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm sorry about the ads. We have no control over the ads.
No, we don't. But with this one, you can see what happened as
That's the one in West Virginia that started this whole
yeah,
conversation of having
the
this.
landslide. Yeah, the mudslide.
I think they were talking somewhere around 200 different graves was affected by this. If you look through there and you look in the back of that picture, it goes clear up this hill. And what you're not seeing in this picture here is there is a whole massive amount of trees that were separated and brought down the middle of this. As this was moving, the ground was moving so much that it actually was picking up stuff out of the ground and taking it down too.
You can see the trees here. I can't play the whole video, but I can show part.
Right.
Here
And
you
that's
see
the
more of the
thing.
trees.
That right there, after I seen this and I was like, oh my gosh, what are these people going to do? I started asking the questions. What do you do? And the thing is, all these people, all these loved ones were looking at this and going, oh my, because 200 graves. And it's just absolutely 200 graves were disturbed. I mean, some of them just were the tombstones. And unfortunately, some of them were a little deeper than just the tombstones. So it's going to be a massive amount of time, effort, and everything for people to go in there with machinery, clear out everything, and start putting stuff back to where it was. And then on top of that, trying to get grass to grow back in that area. It's just going to be an absolutely nightmare because it is such on a hill. Some people say, man, I would want to be on a hill because then I don't have to deal with flooding. Others, I don't want to be on a hill. But as we have done many, many times in our existence, this is exactly what we do. We find a spot that we can actually say, hey, we can do stuff, and we put stuff there. This time, people placed a cemetery. Did they know this was
Mhm.
going to happen? Absolutely not. And that's the thing. We don't know these things are going to happen. What Friday was talking about in the beginning, those circumstances of the different type of graveyard at the end, they knew what they were getting into. This, no one's seen it coming. No one could do it. Some cemeteries, they have drainage pipes all the way through them just to get a little more water out of it. This, I can't even remember. I don't know if it says anything about how much rain they had before this happened. This might just be a short clip.
I don't see it in the words.
Right. So this, for something like this to happen, it wasn't a little amount of rain. It was a decent amount of rain that all happened very quickly. And finally, the earth said, I am done. And the roots and everything just went along. This landslide was absolutely terrible for this community. I'm sure that they're still working on it because this happened not too long ago. I think a month ago.
Hold on. Let me find a month ago. April 3rd.
So here we are. This has just happened a month ago. And who would have, and it says right up there, it says powerful storms affected the area. Yeah, right there.
Mhm.
Mudslide after powerful storms early Wednesday. I'm sure everybody had in their mind, hey, this is going to happen. No, that's a lie. No one knew this was going to happen. No one thought that this was going to happen. I can't see someone saying, oh, hey, I was up there and I looked at it and there's a giant crack in the mud. So this can happen to a lot of places. Unfortunately,
Okay. That is horrifying either way.
yeah. And as you looked at that picture, you guys can also see it stopped. It stopped. There was a possibility of it continuing, which will have took out even more. And the first assessment, they said, well, that's more than 100. Then the second one, no, there was more than that. The next one, it was almost 200, or it did finally get into 200.
Okay, this one is volcano ash.
Is this Pompeii?
These are houses. No, this is
Oh,
Palermo.
okay. Okay.
About 3 years ago.
Another
And
thing that honestly, who would have been able to really think that this would have been so devastating? But we've seen it before, but not in this place and not to this magnitude. I mean, here's
La Palma
different things.
Cemetery.
I mean, there's nothing that you can see except for barely what's there. Right there, that's different crypts. Those are probably urn crypts, I do believe.
Possibly.
It doesn't really say. But this is something that, once again, how do you look at the world and say, oh, I'm going to go in there with a shovel? It's going to take a while to clean it up, and the loved ones are the ones that are going to. I'll tell you what, we're giving a lot of free advertisement to a lot of things here, because there's a lot of ads on this stuff.
Unfortunately, I can't open a site without finding them.
Right, right. And that's unfortunately when you're doing stuff and you're trying to figure out what you can show, and you go to the sites and you just show everything, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, this has got this has got that. But um yeah, that was one that she brought up, and I thought, well, I never even thought of that being a problem. But seems to be wildfires might be the only thing that really does not affect too much.
I just went through the list of different natural disasters I could think about
Yeah.
and what could cause. But this happens so often that there's an entire website to what you should do if there are disasters, what you can think of to start building one for your local area.
Right. And honestly, sometimes that's one of the things that after everything gets done and everything is being handled, cemeteries are sometimes the last thing to get worked on, just because everybody is working on what they have during their life to work on and fix. Once you get that done, then it's a little easier to start getting people into a cemetery and working on the cemetery, getting the cemetery back up and running. But another sad part, people don't stop dying. So as soon as a cemetery is under, has a disaster, people are still dying. And maybe that might be in the cemetery that they were supposed to go to. I know that people have had to reroute where they've been buried just because of different circumstances. Does that ever sound like a great idea? Nope. Because Grandma bought that plot. Grandma said, this is where I'm going to be buried. And unfortunately, sometimes it just don't work out that way.
No. Although one thing we did talk about are the burials on Mount Everest.
So, unfortunately, and I'm going to bring this up. This right here is Mount Everest, and Mount Everest, for some reason people challenge it every single year. They take a group out and they just do this entire thing. But what happens when you don't make it? Well, if you don't make it and you turned around, you can go back. But unfortunately, Mount Everest is one of the worst places to be a graveyard. You don't get buried, you stay there, because it is so much worse trying to get a body back when it is frozen and like this. And a lot of people in these stories that you will read about Mount Everest, they will tell you about the Blue Boot. There is a landmark that is someone's foot that they call the Blue Boot. And it's kind of devastating in some aspects of people, being places and this happening to. And now that Mount Everest is actually kind of melting a little bit, they're finding more and more bodies that they didn't even know nothing about. And then on top of that, hold on, right there. You see these red bottles. These are actual bottles that are oxygen bottles, because once you get so high up on Mount Everest, the air is thin. And when it's so thin, you actually carry these bottles. as you are climbing, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just take all this stuff and just chuck it off to the side. So Mount Everest is actually covered in a whole bunch of trash that we have put there just because this is a side effect of people wanting to be thrill seekers. Now, not saying that it's not a great challenge for someone and they should not be excited to do it. I'm just saying, um, this is a reality. You might not make it, and you might go through your oxygen bottles and throw them off to the side, and not even talking about the little red bags.
Because you can die and end up staying the way you froze for the rest of your life.
Right.
This is not a goal of mine.
No. No, this is one of the worst things that I could think of, being stuck, and sometimes the family just gets a notification that this person was lost. So you don't know where the person is, you don't know if they're officially dead or alive, and what happens if your entire body comes to this, like your entire group. If your entire group goes, that's an entire group that goes missing, and searching for people is just not the case for a lot of this on Mount Everest. Um, Now there is just so many things that I could touch on, and trust me, um, Friday, I got a story for you later that I found, and I just remembered it because we brought this up. And it's actually a story about a member of the Rockefeller household. Um, if you don't know who that is, they were the most powerful family and the richest family in our country and in the world at one point. But
Yes.
yeah, going back to this, being frozen and you become a landmark, you almost become your own tombstone because you're not thawing out anytime soon. And if you do, or you're stuck in the elements, some of these guys, they get buried alive. And when they get buried alive, you might not find them until you're like attaching a rope to something that you think it's a rock, and you come to realize, hey, that's a person, or what's left of a person. This has got to be one of the most. Go ahead.
Choose your thrill seeking wisely.
Right.
So
right.
you find out whether or not you can live through it.
By the way, once again, this show is not supposed to be sad, upsetting, or anything like that. It is just looking at the afterlife and kind of going through different parts of it. Because we're all going to find it. Just hopefully we don't find it like this guy. And that's a terrible way to go. And that's also a terrible way for anybody to be presented. And I'm absolutely surprised that somebody's not like, oh my gosh, will you please get out off my screen by now? It's a sad truth. It really is. People go up missing all the time with this. There is a whole group of people that go out and they volunteer their time and services to go into lakes, rivers, streams, and ponds to find missing people. And they're very good at what they do. It's a terrible thing. People go missing all the time. You don't know what happened to them. And that is a reality. Now, Friday, correct me if I'm wrong. We're not here to make someone feel bad about this, right?
No, I don't want to make anybody feel bad about going up Kilimanjaro or Everest or any other mountain. I want you to think about what you need to do to keep yourself safe while you're doing so, what the risks are, making sure you have a guide.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be safe in your thrill seeking. I also want you to understand that just because we like these places for our family to rest doesn't mean the same natural disasters that
Right.
happen to our homes. I just had to have my parts of my roof fixed because of a bad storm.
And
That
this is
doesn't
also
mean it can't hurt your cemetery.
right. And this is also a show that's trying to make it a little peaceful, understanding the circumstances that might happen. Um, and that is the biggest thing I am on here to do, is just to try making it a little more peaceful and educating. And there are many people out there that have brought light to the uh whole whole circumstances of, unfortunately, your life stopping. But, we don't want to look at you guys and have you guys look at it and go, well, this is horrible. No, we want you guys to celebrate your family, your friends, this and that. Everybody has their own different ways to do it. I've been in cemeteries that they have had liquor bottles constantly at graves. Um, I've heard people saying it's a beautiful thing just to walk through. Uh, I can't wait to go here in 2 years with my son to New Orleans, because New Orleans has some of the best cemeteries. Are we going to see it on our trip? I have no idea, but dang, would I love to see it. I love the way that their culture is, because they just don't celebrate, oh, this person is laying in a casket. No, they celebrate life, and celebrate life so powerfully. I love it. They go out. There is a funeral march. Not saying that everybody's got funeral marches, but it's great that there are funeral marches, um, that people celebrate the person's life, and they don't go and ask the question of why are they not here anymore. They celebrate them knowing them spending time with them. And that's one of the biggest parts that I love. I love knowing the people I do. I know something's going to happen. It might take me out, or it might take anybody out. And I know that there's going to be more funerals in the future that I will have to attend. And my dad made a joke with me a long time ago. He goes, well, why don't you just put fun back in funeral? And I guess I didn't understand it as a joke, because I have absolutely put fun back in funeral, because I am sorry that this person, but my wife's uncle Kevin, man, was he a heavy metal guy. He was absolutely a great guy. And he looked at me the first time I met him and he said, hey, you got $1? I said, yeah. He goes, do you? I said, yeah. And I pulled my wallet out, gave him $1. He goes, oh, I didn't want the dollar. I just, wanted to see if you had $1. And that was his life. He loved Iron Maiden. My gosh, did he love Iron Maiden. But he passed away. He passed away very suddenly. He passed away outside his job. And that is sad. And we miss him. We miss the jokes and this and that. But the way I have honored him is me going up to my niece and going, you got $1? She looks at me and goes, no. One of these days, you're going to have $1. I joke with her like Uncle Kevin. Crazy Uncle Kevin. And it was great. Some people get buried. Some people get cremated. Some people get blasted into outer space. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. That right there would be an episode. The things you can do to your loved ones to show your appreciation. You want to turn them into a concrete structure, throw them into the ocean, and let coral reef start bedding. There you go. They got that. They can send you into space. They can make you into jewelry. And the thing is, that's amazing that they can do all this stuff. And that is one of the things that on this show we want to talk about. We want to talk about everything because when the person closes their eyes and never opens them again, is not the last time that you cared about that person. You continue, and that is the happy moments. Always think about the people that you have had in your life. I don't know. I can keep on talking about this. There you go. There's the stone I've been waiting for all this time. Friday, go ahead. Tell the story again.
Okay. My dad, before he died, he said, when I die, I am not in my body anymore. You could use my ashes to put on the path when it snows to make it easier for you to get out. But my dad was a big Conan friend. So big that my sister is literally named after Red Sonja. On his arm, he had this tattoo. So my sister drew it out and gave it to the monument sculptor, and he put her drawing on the back of the tombstone so we could honor our dad one last time with his most favorite book series and movies, Conan the Barbarian.
I'm going to have to argue that fact that you said one last time because I'm telling you right now, every time you show that picture, you are bringing him back to life. Every time you tell a story of a loved one that passed away, you have brought them back. They will always be with us in the stories, the memories, and this and that. And yeah, okay, we might have that crazy story about someone that might be a little exaggerated, but you still brought them back just for one good laugh
You want the
because they
crazy
would have loved
exaggerated
it.
story?
What's that?
You want the crazy exaggerated story that keeps coming back to my brain?
Go for it. Because you know what? This is the show to do it on. Go for it. As long as you don't
My dad and
cry.
uncle, they were on a boat in a lake in Tennessee, and the motor stopped, and they got the bright idea to paddle like John Wayne. You saw John Wayne paddle in the early black and white movies, right? One side. What happens when you paddle a boat on one side?
You go around in a
Start
circle.
going in circles.
Yeah.
So they're going in circles, thinking, he's like, why isn't this working? And then finally, my uncle gets the motor started, and it starts, and it jumps them up out of the water into the tree beside the bank. And they're sitting in the tree in the boat trying to figure out how to get down.
And that's the thing. When it comes down to somebody passing on, they still stay with us through the memories, the stories that we tell. And, you know, I'm going to be right honest. YouTube and other stuff has made it so much easier for us to look at the people that have been here with us in our lives and documenting it. A lot of different platforms are. Facebook, 10 years ago, did you remember this? Yeah, I do. And there was a crazy picture of me and my grandmother sitting on the couch, and she always had this. She always told me that there was a picture of her dead in a casket, and she absolutely hated that picture. And I started laughing. I said, "How did you get a picture of you in one of those? Because you've never been in it." "Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, this was the dementia talking." And you know what? I sat down right beside her. I took a picture of me and her together and I posted it on Facebook and I said, "There. Now we will always have this great picture of us on Facebook." And Facebook reminds me about it over and over every single year. Hey, a year ago. Hey, 3 years ago. 7 years ago. And I'm not mad at it for it one bit because it reminds me of that moment. And they taught me a lot of things, how to work, how to do stuff, how to do this and that. And I'm very, very excited always to talk about them. And I have other grandparents that have taught me other things. And I am very thankful that they have taught me different things. So, it's one of those things that, yes, we make these stories. Yes, they passed on, but we do not let them disappear because we still remember it. I remember Uncle Kenny, big Uncle Kenny, big heart, wonderful person. We made sure that he was the king of the luau for our 4th of July celebration. And the funniest time that I ever seen him almost dying laughing was the time that Dad set off some fireworks. One shot up, one came back down, went in the bag of fireworks. Dad took off running. Dad's hula skirt dropped down to his knees. He fell down. Uncle Kenny seen this and started laughing so hard that everybody was worried about his health because he was laughing so much. And these are the great reminders that we have. That's why in the Mexican tradition of the Day of the Dead, they lay out pictures and they decorate different cemeteries. And when they decorate the different cemeteries, they make sure that they give skull candies and other stuff to celebrate the life that that person has had. By the way, this is totally off the track of disasters, but it's okay. Because here on the Owl Light Network, we have a squirrel that runs through every single one of our brains, and we just can't stay on track of one topic.
Erratic Tusker is all our friend.
Well, Dell ain't giving us the warning either.
No.
But no, anything else you want to say about this?
So
I'm sorry.
we can talk about this since we are nearing the end of the show.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we squirrel off towards the end of shows and this and that. But without a doubt, I just want to tell everybody's got a story about someone they knew that they cared about so much that they will think about that story every single time, and it will bring a tear to their eye. And it's not a bad tear. It's a tear of the pure enjoyment and love and care that we've had with this person. And we never get rid of these people. And we bring them up. And my senior class, for some reason, we lost a lot of our seniors. I don't know why, but as soon as we got high school diploma, we start dying off. And it was terrible because our class would go through one funeral, then there. But there was one kid in there that absolutely passed away, and he was battling cancer for so long. So it was a blessing to us, and we were happy to known him. But now he doesn't have the struggles that he did towards the end. And that's the thing. That's one of the things that when you go through a cemetery and you look at people that have the names, you might recognize the person or you might not. My haunt, it has a cemetery stone. It was in it was in a cemetery. He got a different stone. This stone got pulled out. Don't know how it got where it got. We took it and no one could figure out who it was except for my father, that looked at me and said, "He worked in a shop. Why is that here?" And I told him, I said, "You knew him?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." Brings up the question, why is that here? Why is that not on his grave? I said, because his mother and father got one that was all three of their names. So they took his and moved it somewhere. I still don't know how it got to where it did, but now it is with us and we take great care of it. We appreciate the person that actually has the name on that stone. And that's the thing. There's vandals out there that destroy stones. It's not natural disasters or anything like that. People actually do it. So when you go through a cemetery the next time and you're looking at all the stones, just think of the people and look at some of the stones, because the stories are on the stones. There is a stone that has a secret recipe because she said she was going to bring it to her grave, and they put it on the back of her stone, and it says, "I brought it to my grave. Here's what you need for my chocolate chip cookies."
I
So,
remember
anything else you want to add?
Yeah, my friend had died of cancer whenever I just got out of high school. And I was asking my boss if I can have a week away from that date off so we could do her memorial. And he looks at me and asks, "Is this person dead yet?" And I had to explain, yes, she passed away of cancer and they had cremated her. It was going to be a little bit before family could come in. And that question just is stuck in my head. Is your friend dead yet?
So, I do want to ask a question here. We have a email, right, Friday, at the Allight
Yes,
Network?
allightsociety@gmail.com.
Okay. So what I would like for people to do is, number one, if you like what we're talking about and you have stories or you have something that you would like us to bring on one of these episodes, because we're not afraid of death. Death has been a pretty good friend, unfortunately, to me. But we do care about so many people, and we care about our viewers. And we would like to hear some feedback, some stories, something on we how people would like to see this go. Because, we could talk about what type of different marble is in stones, but truly, is that something that people really want to see? Or is it us investigating kind of into, in case of a funeral, what's some things that needs to be brought up and thought about? Because unfortunately, usually this stuff is the stuff that you don't think about until it happens. There is life insurance. I don't want to investigate into things that people don't want to hear about, but I know that we could bring in a whole bunch of different stories of loved ones that, just to have some stories. And that's one of the things that we absolutely love to do, is figure out what you guys all want to hear, because when it comes down to this thing, oh look,
Pennsylvania has a lot of ancient and creepy history. A lot has happened over the years. I pity the fool to get haunted messing around with gravestones. Yeah,
Pennsylvania, absolutely, there is so much to Pennsylvania, and I will tell you, they have a town that underneath it is on fire. And it is incredible, because that whole situation, that whole accident has caused so many problems. And Pennsylvania, absolutely, I will give your state some major credit. It was there for a very long time, and they are
Centralia.
finding things. Yeah. And they are, which is also the baseline behind Silent Hill,
Hmm.
if you didn't know that. But Pennsylvania absolutely is one of those places that you guys have such a history. I will take my hat off every single time to your guys' history that just absolutely amazes me through your guys' giant hills, mountains, and everything. They actually in Pennsylvania actually have steamworks for steam locomotives, but that is not part of the show at all.
Mm-mm.
But
Okay,
yeah,
we have come to our hour and a half mark, and we are going to end the show here. Remember, someday you will have your own corpse garden to play around in. Where would you like people to find you, Pyle?
you can find me in a lot of different places. Not the same place Raz is usually found. Thank goodness. Even though your mom probably makes wonderful pancakes, you ain't gonna find me there. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on um, TikTok. You can find me always here on the Elliott Network because I love this place. And I'm so grateful that you guys gave me an opportunity and picked me up off the side of the highway.
I can be found here at the Elliott Network at Fake Horror Publishing at Friday with the Librarian Blue Box and my author page, for Elliott. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And remember, one day you too shall pass away. And hopefully everybody will remember you fondly. Have a great night. Bye.
Bye, guys.